bad events make people grow. I mean, up to a point, of course. Bad events can be, something that kills you doesn't make you grow. But so there's something called post-traumatic growth, and psychologists don't talk about it. All they talk about is disorder, and the idea that nobody's going to make any money selling you, post-traumatic growth. They give you, because they don't have to treat you. Nature is treating you. Okay, well, psychologists make money giving you advice on your post-traumatic disorder. So they like to put disorders. And then, of course, the antifragile, a lot of people upregulate under stressors. That's the post-traumatic growth. In other words, if you need stressors, you must get your stressors. So there are going to be wind. There's an expression in the States, when life gives you a lemon, you make lemonade. The idea is that there's going to be a lot of wind. So either you go into the basement and start crying and ask for government money, all right? Or there's going to be a lot of wind and say, I'm going to make some money out of it. Build windmills. So that's the main one. And if you look at the history of civilization and countries, you see a parameter. A little bit of stressor has caused a lot of people to do very well. I think the most successful country in history, Singapore, they have no resources. So when you don't have resources, you tend to upregulate. The Phoenicians had no resources, so it forced them to, become merchants, and one thing leads to another. So it gets you out of the lethargical states. And you look at Saudi Arabia, they have all the resources, and look what they've done with them compared to Singapore.
In an early chapter of the book, you have a very long table with 3 columns.
Yes.
Fragile, robust, and anti-fragile. And you can pick any of the rows in that table and elaborate on it. For example, tourists and flâneur, one of your favorite words. There is something quite deep in that discussion.
Okay, I was an option trader. Option, you like optionality. You see, you like uncertainty. You benefit from uncertainty. You like some disorder. When you're a tourist, you're on the track. If the bus is late, you're in trouble. If you're an adventurer, you benefit, you're opportunistically taking advantage of uncertainty. So therefore, you're in that category of antifragile. And if you're robust, you don't care. So the idea of entrepreneurs are in the category of antifragile. And the people who have, a very rationalistic thing put on track, you're following a certain code, you are fragile, because if something breaks, you're in trouble. Nothing good, can happen. Things can go wrong, but they can get better. So the fragile has more downside than upside. Uncertainty harms them. Take a plane ride. If you inject uncertainty into a plane ride, I just came from Europe. It was 8 hours, ended up to be 16. So I was 8 hours late. Did anyone of you ever land in JFK coming from Europe 8 hours early? No. So category of object. You inject uncertainty, the travel time extends. The opposite would be a system in which you inject uncertainty, you have benefits. And that's the antifragile, entrepreneurship. If you're an adventurer, you like uncertainty. And people, couldn't get it. I have a way to explain it. Someone tells me, what's the difference with resilient? I say, there's a big difference. If I buy insurance on my house in 10 times the amount needed, I want an accident to happen. You see, it's not, I want it every day, morning I'd wake up, I'd say, there's no cow, no earthquake, nothing. If at 10 times, I got paid 10 times the damages. So that's like inverse insurance. So insurance companies, of course, are short volatility, are harmed by disorder, they are fragile. And someone who has 10 times insurance would, benefit from uncertainty. I think that education is not very good because in higher doses, because it's sort of it selects for those who don't know how to handle uncertainty, right? And this is why great scientists like Darwin, Einstein, Grothendieck, all the big scientists are people who were not into the traditional, education system simply because it kills creativity and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. So when I was about 14, I decided to become a writer. And I realized that if you stick to school, It narrows what you're going to know, all right? And to be a writer, you have to read a lot of books. So I started reading wholesale, and it saved me the bad part of education where you have, to read a certain number of books, and so the narrow education, the broader one. And I think that's what saved me from this, race, the education race. So I had an and then I developed, very quickly an anti-education. I think the only way you can learn things is if you're autodidact. Mm-hmm. And it allows you not just to have a breadth of things, but to focus on things that are really important to you, not to some second-rate person who teaches high school, right? And I hated my high school teachers. You can understand I was quite rebellious. So
he was not in Finland, by the way. He was in France.
Okay. So it was so I think that helped me a lot, reading a lot of books. Right?
The great American author Mark Twain once said, "I never let school get in the way of my education."
Yeah. Writers usually don't like formal education.
So, but obviously in an engineered world, in a world that's so technically complicated, you've got to have, to deal with it, you have to have some educational
It's
prowess.
good to have a minimal education, but not to focus on school. Because anything people are going to teach you at school is useless already, or has been used. So this is one thing you learn as a trader. Anything you're going to read in the newspaper, say the first 15 pages of the newspaper, is of absolutely no relevance to anything that's already priced in. Okay. So that's the way, it's the same way to view education. So if you compare apprenticeship, which is more tinkering, trial and error, more doing things, apprenticeship is something very prevalent in Switzerland and Germany, and I don't know about Nordic countries. That's vastly more important than education.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, most people don't understand what Stoic is, and they think that a Stoic wants to sort of be robust, no positive nor negative emotions, get rid of these
detachment from the world.
Yeah, exactly. So in other words, become a vegetable, and that's the impression that for a long time, for about 2,000 years, we had of the Stoics, mostly because nobody really read them, so people kept commenting on comments. But when I read the best expositors of Stoicism, the best two expositors actually, Marcus Aurelius and Seneca, and probably also to some extent Cicero, I realized these are not that type of people. Very different. And now recently I saw some papers confirming my idea that what Seneca was is about being long options. He wanted to keep the upside and not be hurt by the downside. That's it. It's just how to set up his method. Seneca was the wealthiest man in the world. He had 500 desks, on which he wrote his letters, talking about how good it was to be poor, and people found inconsistency, but they didn't realize what Seneca said. He was not against wealth, you see, and he proved, that effectively that a philosopher can have wealth and can be a philosopher. What he was about is dependence on wealth. He wanted the upside of wealth without its downside. And what he would do is, he had been a shipwreck before. He would fake like he's a shipwreck and travel like a shipwreck once in a while. And then he would go back to his, villas and feel rich. He would write off every night before going to bed his entire wealth.
As a mental exercise. You just
as
say,
a mental
I'm
exercise,
poor.
and wakes up rich.
Yeah.
So they kept the upside. In fact, what they had is, my summary of what the Stoics were about is as follows. I mean, the people who really had, it was like Buddhist, but it was an attitude, wanted to have the last word with fate. Mm-hmm. And my definition is, I said, a Stoic sage is someone who transforms fear into prudence, pain into information, mistakes into initiation, and desire into undertaking. So it's very different from the Buddhist idea of someone who is, completely separated from worldly sentiments and possessions and thrills. It was very different. It's someone who wanted the upside without downside. And Seneca proved it.
And the way you get there, is Seneca suggesting, is through mental exertion. Not through necessarily, some of it's action, obviously, but some of it is the way you look at your life and what you prepare yourself for, and how you affect your expectations.
Exactly. He understood the hedonic treadmill, that Danny Kahneman rediscovered about 2,000 years later. He understood it very well. And he understood that wealth, he said, you're in debt when you have wealth, whether you are in debt from, just debt from others or from fortune, you see. Mm-hmm. And he wanted to write off that fortune, and he wanted to remove his dependence on fate, on randomness. He wanted to have the last word was randomness. And he did.
Not a bad goal.
So here I've introduced the book, and I end the book with the following. The only way you know you're alive, you're not a machine, is if you like variability. So this is it. If you're anti-fragile, it means you're alive.
Now let me leave you with some quotes and ideas related to these rules. Do hard things. Let's hear Naval Ravikant's take on this.
Look at the kids who are born rich, no meaning to their lives.
It's a terrible place.
Your real resume is just a cataloging of all your suffering, right? If I were to ask you to describe your real life to yourself, when you look back on your deathbed, you're going to go back and say, what are the interesting things I've done? And it's all going to be around the sacrifices that you made and the hard things that you did. Anything you're given doesn't matter. You have your 4 limbs, you have your brain, you have your head, you have your skin. That's all for granted. So you have to do hard things anyway to create your own meaning in life.
Quote from Seneca. No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself. Go through life as a flâneur. Nassim Taleb wrote, if you know in the morning what your day looks like with any precision, you're a little bit dead. The more precision, the more dead you are. You have a calibrated life when most of what you fear has the titillating prospect of adventure. Develop an anti-education. Quote from Nassim Taleb. Only the autodidacts are free. And now a quote from Jim Rohn. Formal education will make you a living. Self-education will make you a fortune. Adopt an anti-fragile life philosophy. On his book, Letters from a Stoic, Seneca wrote, set aside a certain number of days, during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, with coarse and rough dress, saying to yourself the while, is this the condition that I feared? Tim Ferriss is also known for following this practice. Let's hear it from him.
For inoculating yourself against that fear of loss, of failure, especially for things outside of your control, I always talk about it, but I'll talk about it again, is Letters from a Stoic by Seneca. Like training yourself. I've given hundreds of copies of this book away. The ability to inoculate yourself against fear by training. So for instance, like spending 4 or 5 days, not even that much, 2 days a month where you eat the cheapest food, wear the cheapest clothing, don't use transportation, then you ask yourself, all along, is this the condition I so feared?
Totally.
And then your fear of failure, like, this isn't so bad, I can do fine.